Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good. Go out and try your luck, you may be down or done. Hooray for Hollywood, hooray for Hollywood.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Hollywood Knitter. My name is Allison and this is my podcast. I'm recording on Saturday, August 23rd, 2025 from my home in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone? It's been a few weeks. I guess, almost, I think July was the last time I came to you guys. So it's been a while. How's everyone's summer going? My summer's been great. It's been busy. Lots to share with you today. And I'm happy to be checking in with you guys. Let's just get started. Let's get started with finished objects. This is my Heimathafen by Isabell Kraemer. We've been calling it, I've been doing this as a knit along with a bunch of people, and we've been calling it the Hefeweizen because we all know how to say Hefeweizen, but Heimathafen. By Isabell Kraemer. So this is my latest FO, and I'm going to put in a little video here of me modeling it standing up, but I'm so in love with it. Like, it's got like more than little 3/4 length sleeves, fingering weight. This is Purl Soho linen quill in the Stonewall gray, and then this purple is clematis, and I love it. I love it so much. It is just like the perfect lightweight sweater. This is called the dip stitch, and it looks really cool. And it's super easy to do. Like, once you understand it, it's literally just going in like 3 stitches below and pulling up, and that's what gives these points, the gray and the purple. And I knit this from May 23rd to August 3rd. And as I said, I was doing it as a knit along with a bunch of friends from back east. Marilyn Sheepwell, we saw another friend of mine, Liz. Hers was almost done. Liz, you need to finish it. And we really liked it. And we had Purl Soho minis to choose from, and we all kind of chose different ones. And I might be the first one of the group to finish, but everyone is pretty close, and everyone has different colors, different combinations that work for them, and it's worked really good. I highly recommend the sweater. It is, as you can see, just kind of a little rolled neck going into here. The other thing that's really cool about it is it's a, this is a little bit of raglan, so it's kind of a combo, which I really like for the circular, and then I think with the combo, it fits better than, say, typical yoke necks do. And I really like the construction. This is my first Isabell Kraemer pattern that I've ever done. And she has so many great patterns. So I will definitely be doing more in the future. And I really like the yarn, the Purl Soho stiffened up. This is such an economical yarn. You can get Purl Soho is constantly on sale, like 25% off. And then this whole sweater was 939 yards. And it was, I didn't put how much in, but I think I used, I want to say 3 of the gray, and then I had minis of this. So I think I used a little over 1 mini, and I had 2 of the minis, and the minis they come in the mini kit. My friend had a whole, she had like 2 or 3 kits that someone had given her for the holidays. And so she very generously actually gave me the purple, and it was just enough. There is a total of 6 stripes, and that is pretty typical of the pattern. I was debating on like going slightly longer because, as you can see, it's a little short of bracelet length, but I really like this. I think it is a better kind of mid-weight or lightweight kind of layer, which is perfect for today. Although it is super hot in Los Angeles right now, we're having a heat wave. For whatever reason, today there's storms, which is crazy. We don't usually get heat storms and stuff. That's what I'm assuming is happening. But it is a little overcast. We had a little bit of rain, just enough to get that rain smell, which I love the rain smell. And so, yeah, so this is perfect to put on right now. we'll see if I keep it on. But yeah, highly recommend this sweater to anyone looking for a great sweater. It's super easy. I think my modifications, I had to go up a needle for gauge, so I actually knit this on a 5. I think the pattern was either a 3 or a 4, which is pretty typical for me. I'm a tight knitter. And then I did, I think, 2 more rows between the repeats than she did. And that was because I messed it up. Like the first one, I miscounted the number, and so I just kept it consistent so that my stripes were consistent. But I'm loving, like, look, this is like perfect. Like the arm to the body goes right across and my arms are down. It's like awesome. So this was my major whip that I got done, and sweaters are always good for me. I only usually I average 3 to 4 sweaters a year. I think I'm gonna have more this year. I think I might actually have like 6 this year. That is kind of my goal, is say 6 sweaters, so like a sweater every 2 months or so. And mixing weight with fingering, because obviously fingering takes me a while. This was great because so much of it after you got here is just stockinette, like all just stockinette, and then you just have, this is only 6 rows, and then, you know, 28 rows of stockinette. So went super fast when I was knitting on it, and then put it down. You know, that's what I do, is you knit on it and then something happens, I'm traveling, I can't break it, and then don't knit on it for a few weeks and then pick it back up again. But yeah, overall super pleased with it, happy to add it, and it fits just right. I think I did a size 1 with some modifications. So I wanted, very typical me, I wanted something that was in between size based on my gauge. So I did some mathing and basically did some numbers to give me a 1.5, let's call it, size, which ended up being perfect. Perfect for me. Next up, another big one I finished, and I cast this on June 17th, finished it August 1st, and this is the inner piece by Locatelli. Ignore this little like gap right here. I was just messing with it. For some reason I have like a stretch stitch, so I'm gonna tighten that up afterwards. But this is a shawl that I had seen, I don't know, it was one of the Hohies that I'd added and I liked it. I didn't have the yarn. She used a silk linen blend, and I never was actually able to find that. So I think her version is actually bigger. I mean, in terms of depth, hers is more shawl-like, but I was specifically looking for a yarn for this because I had started with a different yarn and it was going to be too dense. It wasn't giving me the fabric I wanted. So I had ripped it out, but really still wanted to make the pattern. And so when I was at Maryland Sheep and Wool, I was looking for a yarn, and I picked up this Avalon Springs Farms Pendragon in Swan Feather, and it's 100% merino, and it was a 555 yard skein. And yeah, it gave me, you can see the Swan Feather. So it is mostly this kind of neutral-ish white, but you can see that there is some color in there, like a little bit of gray, and then there's here and there's like a pop of, looks like yellow or there. So totally like it. I wanted a neutral kind of shawl, and I will almost always wear my shawls kind of like this when they're that kind of thing. They're just like that neck thing I need in the office, especially when we go into the fall and the winter. Obviously it's very warm, but I still tend to wear long sleeves to work because it's always over air conditioned and I'm always cold. So I will wear shawls to give me just that extra layer of warmth. I find if I'm wearing one around my neck, it really goes a long way to keeping me warm. And I wanted just a total neutral. I love making my shawls and shawlettes in colors, but then sometimes they're harder to match with things, obviously. And so I wanted a neutral. So that's why I went with this just very cream color. So this will go with pretty much anything I'm wearing. And then if I needed to, it is long enough. I could just wear it like as just that little bit of shawl over the shoulders. It's got the long trail, so it won't there. And I could wear it that way too, if I needed that. Modifications on this, the only kind of modification I made is she had very different kind of bobbly edges. These are a bobble. And hers were longer and dangly. They almost look like, I don't know, hairs to me. And so I modified that. So I did a shorter bobble and I spaced them out a little bit more to give me that edging. And I really like the construction. You can see it's this first wedge and then like 2 more wedges and go from there. Now, I did run out of yarn. Let's see. Like the last 2 rows. Let's see what edge it is. Okay, it's this edge. So you can see right here, I had to cast off the last 2 in a yarn I had that I have a bunch of minis. And I have a bunch of solid minis actually from, I think 2 years ago from the Fiber Nymph, or this past year, from the Fiber Nymph advent calendar where she had done solids and minis. And so this is actually, I don't know if you can see it, it's got a little bit of the sparkle, but it was just a cream mini. And it totally, you totally can't tell in the scheme of it that I had to do that. So I had to break in and use like, 3 grams of that. I knew at the halfway point that I was a little close, but this was a travel knitting for a lot of times because you did have to pay attention when you're doing increases and things like that in short rows. And so I did knit this a few times where I brought it on the plane because obviously it was just a single skein. So it was very portable, but it required a little bit of thought. And so that was perfect for like a lot of plane knitting. I think there were like 2 trips. I think I brought this to Zombie Apocalypse and did it on the plane. And then there was another trip I did. So yeah, so super happy with it. So I recommend, I mean, I've never had a bad hoagie pattern that I did, and I like her shawls. I mean, this in essence is a 1 skein, but those ones that are bigger, like you get sometimes those skeins that are like 150 grams, and the pattern actually calls for light fingering, which is what I was going for with this. And it's all blocked and good. And yeah. So that is Inner Peace by Joji Locatelli. Recommend. Super happy. It's going to add this to my shawl wall. I have all of my shawls, or my kind of shawlettes, stored on a, I think it's either meant to be a belt holder. It's like got the 12, it's like 4 by 4, 16, I think, little circle holes. And I think it's meant to be a belt holder, but I have it on the wall and I have all of my shawls draped through the holes. All of my shawlettes kind of thing. And then I can see them all and they kind of hang like this so they don't get all folded up. And I can pick whatever one I want at any one time and just pull it out really easy and wear it. And then it's also art on the wall. I like putting my knitting out and about on the wall, which is why I have my other FO. I had to just go pull it off the wall because all my latest socks go on the wall. This is Pale Stripes. Is the color, well, that's what I called it. That was my Ravelry name, was called Pale Stripes. The yarn, the pattern is kind of a hybrid. This is just my typical toe up knitting pattern that I do, but the heel was a new one to me. This is Palindrome by Amanda Schwabe, or Schwab, and it is in the latest Knitty. And I'm a sucker for a different heel. And this is pretty cool in the fact that it's a specifically, if you go to the palindrome pattern, which I did not do, you can actually knit it. She writes it so you can knit it toe up all the way, keep knitting, just put a lifeline kind of through there, keep knitting and go all the way back and basically have a tube and then just cut into the middle and finish off the edges. I did not do it that way. I just used it for the heel. And that worked for me. And it's a cool heel. It's like this weird kind of slip stitchy, but still short row heel. I haven't had a chance to wear it, so I'm not sure how it's going to wear, but I am doing it on the other sock that I'm working on. Oh, and the yarn is 716 Knits. The Girl Makes Godot Look Punctual. And this was something I picked up at Zombie Apocalypse 2021. She is usually a vendor at Zombie Apocalypse, and I love her sock yarn. She does great kind of stripes, and I love this kind of gray with the speckle stripe. These will probably be for me at some point. But yeah, so those were the socks. This took me, these were pretty quick actually. I think these were travel. I brought these with me traveling. That's why I was like, I did these in 3 weeks, which is pretty fast for me. Those are my 3 FOs that I've had since I last talked to you. Now, I've cast on more. I'll start with the easy one. I'll start with my socks. I always have a pair of socks going. As you guys know, it's my travel. It's what I usually have in my purse. It's what I like to have at work. And I am through a sock and a half. So I'll throw one of the socks on a sock blocker. These socks I'm knitting for someone else, I think. I'm intending, they're sort of intended to be for my brother, but I need to see if the length ended up being right. I thought it was, but they also seem to fit me. So, but they could fit him as well. We'll see. Instead of my 64 stitches, I did 72 stitches. I did a little bit more in the length, and then I did the palindrome heel again. And so this is what the first one looks like. And the yarn is stuff I've been trying to get out of my stash that's older. It is the Apple Yarn Studio Macintosh and Harvest Moon. So I'm calling these my Harvest Moon socks. And this is a 60% merino, 20% alpaca, 20% nylon. And I got it at Stitches SoCal in 2019. So it is older stash for me. And I really love it. It's super soft. It is kind of a single construction. It's actually plied, but it definitely feels single. It's very easy to split it. And so I do have to pay a little bit of attention to that. But you can kind of see how the heel works. It looks really kind of cool. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think at some point, this is the eye of partridge kind of stitch, and I can see 1 or 2 spots where I messed it up, but you'd have to look pretty close. And then the way the heel works is it's eye of partridge on either side, and then you have 4 stitches in the middle that are just kind of straight, and then it's done on either side. So yeah, and I'm making them taller. That was the intent. I usually don't do my socks this tall, so I think I did 60 rows and then 60 rows for the leg before, I think, 15 rows of the ribbing. And I'm in the middle of a row because I stop in the middle of a row, but I'm past the heel on this one, and I'm working on the leg. And so I've had some knitting time this past week, and I brought these with some recent travels, and so I got one done, and now I'm in the mindless part. And I'm actually probably just going to sit here and finish this real quick while I talk, because I want to put it back, and I shouldn't have stopped in the middle of a row. I will show my knitting, because, you know, some people like to see knitting on there, and I've been told, I don't know, I knit, not oddly, but differently than some other people. If you've not been here long or haven't watched me in my many, many years of doing both this video cast and my audio podcast beforehand, I am entirely self-taught. I have been knitting 22 years now. Wow, I've been knitting 22 years. But I taught myself from books, and it's still my preferred way of learning things. I like pictures and written directions more than I like a video. And that's probably the engineer in me, just the way I learn. But yeah, I typically pick up new techniques that way as opposed to video. I'm not averse to watching a video, but that's not my preferred way of kind of getting it. So these are my socks. I really like kind of the micro stripes I'm getting from the color, and wanted to make these a little bigger to try to use more of the yarn, which is working. You can see I still have a fair amount. It's interesting, you know, my 100 grams is, you know, typical skein. And even though I do both socks for myself as well as some of the men in my life, I never use 100 grams. You know, most of the time for my socks, I'm 50 grams, 55 grams. And even for the guys, it's like 75 grams. So yeah, I have lots of sock yarn. I have lots of sock yarn minis. I have lots of sock yarn scraps. And that's why I'm going to I've done quite a few, you know, mini sock blankets, actually, crocheted. I've done linen stitch to use a lot of the extra skeins that I have. And I have probably in a few months another one I'm gonna do a sweater with some of them. That's my plan. But socks. The other thing I cast on for, we'll go with, is these are 2 projects, but from my Make 9. Beginning of the year, I select 9 projects with some of my stash I have in hand. How I use Ravelry is I have all of my stash in Ravelry, and then I will earmark projects that I have yarn for and patterns in my queue. And at the beginning of every year, I pick 9 that I do. I try to focus on quite a few of them be using older stash, but then, you know, just stuff that I think I want to do that year. And so for my Make 9, of which I'm almost done with my Make 9, I think this is my 8th and 9th project. So I had picked some yarn I had picked up on destash. A friend was destashing at one of the knitting retreats I went to a while ago, and it is Freya hand painted. She sold these for an incredible like $5, and it's a 70% merino, 30% silk, and sport weight. And I picked this up from 2019. This is what the ball looks like. It is a gradient yarn, and I'm over halfway, and you'll see in a minute, but this is how it comes. You can see it's gray, and then it's grading out, and this one graded actually pink. And then I had a similar color, but not the same, that was more grays, and I had always had the idea of using these together. And so I I found a project that I liked, and have started knitting on it, and I love it. And it is the Sidestep Brioche Cowl by Tina Whitmore. It was a kit pattern that I forgot who she did it for quite a few years ago. And so she actually, for these kind of alternating ribs, uses different color minis. I instead am using just the gradiating yarn, and I love it. So basically, and I think I modified it slightly. I think she did 6 rows of these, like 6 rows of the knit purl, and then you alternate, and I'm doing 7 rows. I also changed the numbers a little bit because I'm using a sport weight versus a fingering weight, so I made a little less stitches. I forget what the original pattern is, but mine's 160 to get the same size. And this is about a 34-inch diameter. But anyways, brioche, as you can see, super pretty. And you can kind of see it's the pink that was going into the deeper pink that's now going kind of this deeper purple, and then we'll go into the gray. And then the gray, because the other thing is it looks different on the other side. That's what's awesome about brioche, is this gray, and then it's going into the darker gray. I love this. It is, brioche in the round is super, super easy to do once you get it set up, once you can recognize and do a little bit of reading on your brioche. And then this is super easy because basically you're doing the knit purl, and then when you're ready to switch, you just switch, you know, so instead of doing the knit through those 2 stitches, you do a purl. And so I have this as my kind of TV knitting right now, and it is so squishy. It is so nice. I think I might actually keep this, which I don't always necessarily plan on doing, but I really love it. Now I need to decide. I wanted to use as much of this yarn as I can, and these yarns came in 75 grams as opposed to 50. So I think it was, I have this, the ball band. I think it was 200 yards maybe of sport. Let's see, 256 yards. But I might actually not be able to use it all because it might be too tall then, but I'm going to see. I'm definitely over halfway. So I've done 4, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, and I'm on the 6. I'm either going to do 8, which will probably be the height I want, or if I want to use more of the yarn, I might do 10. We'll see. But highly recommend this. Easy to do with fingering, easy to do with minis. I will say that the pattern doesn't teach you brioche, so you do need to know some brioche, and I had to remind myself because it's been a while since I did brioche. But that's what, you know, the internet is great about. So I was able to just Google it, do a I think in this case I used some tutorials Isolde had on her site, and then once I had it, it was easy. And as I said, it's so squishy, and it's so soft with the silk, and it's so easy. And I love the gradiating color. I love the pink going into the darker, and I love how it looks different, little which side you are, and that when I wear this and it's folded, like, it will look great. It's not one of those, the inside and the outside, there is no inside and outside. Like, it can go either way. It is totally interchangeable either side, and it looks great on each side. So one of the things I have with some of those that have a pattern on one side but then are like stranded on the back or something is, like, when you wear them in a cowl, you know, both sides show, you know, what could be the front side and the back side. But because this is truly interchangeable, it looks great on both sides. So wearing it will look great. And it's intended to be, I have it on smaller needles, but you can kind of see, you know, it's going to be just that little bit of warmth. I didn't make it long enough to wrap or anything. I knew I didn't have enough for that. And I just wanted it, which I've never had, like, just a cowl like this, the shorter cowls. I've always kind of done the longer cowls to wrap, but I think this will be great. And I have it in my Twisted Stitches bag because I'm matching. I think it matches. And yeah, I'm sure I'll have that done by the time I podcast next. And my last one is another sweater. And so this was the third sweater I had on my Make 9 for this year. And this is using, again, yarn I've had in my stash. And the yarn, the pattern is Allie's Sweater by Sarah Opie. And Allie is from the Allie from Explorer Knits. And so it was originally done in her yarns. And I think I first saw this Woolen Folk 2 years ago, the Disastrous Woolen Folk. But I think she had the sweater as a sample in her booth and I really liked it. And so it is a DK Wit sweater and I'm doing mine in DK that I had. Let me show you. It is color work on top and it's kind of like reminiscent of, to me, of mountains. So it's all color work on top and once you split for the sleeves, it's going to be all solid. Now my green is Ula and Leah DK Wool Cashmere Blend. It's an 8515 in olive that I got last year from the Kickstarter I back. I have a lot of Ula and Leah in my stash, and it is a Kickstarter from a gentleman based in Mongolia. He is American, and he wanted to, I don't know, help. Initially, it was, you know, to help move some of the fibers. Now I think it's kind of his business, and he backs on a Kickstarter by allowing him to get that initial startup to buy the fibers, and he has different colors and different spins. And so I've been backing it as a Kickstarter quite a few years, and the cowl I did for my mom for her birthday, that was the cashmere that I got from that. So this is great. I'm loving the look of it. I really am. And it's going pretty fast because it's DK, which is another reason I wanted to switch to a DK, because after fingering, this goes super fast. I have about, I think, one more repeat of the color work before I split for sleeves. I'm doing size 1.5 again. So size 1 plus some stitches. And again, modified for my gauge. So I don't think my gauge was exactly spot on. So I did the math, you know, here's my gauge, here's the gauge I liked, and adjusted for the measurements I want. I am preferring to have my sweaters be a little more fitted, not negative ease, but not the current trend of 6, 8, 10 inches of positive ease. I'm looking more along the lines of 2 to a max of 4. So that's what I'm sizing mine for. So yeah, super nice. Look at that. And then the back. So all of this kind of goes up there, kind of falls into it. The contrasting yarn is leftovers I had. This is, what is this? Zombie Yarns Monster and Tricky Spay. And it's 100% merino that I got at the super sale at Stitches West in 2022. Zombie Yarns no longer dyes, and it was the Lorna from the original Lorna's Laces, and then she sold it, and then she started a yarn line, and then she decided she wanted to get all out of yarn. So at Stitches West in 2022, all of her yarn that she had was on a fire sale on the first night, the preview night. She was selling everything for like $5. And if you bought, you know, 4 skeins, you got 1 free kind of thing. And so I actually have a Brooklyn, I forget what it's called, but I have a sweater out of this, and I had still had a skein plus of this left. So this is what I'm using for my contrasting, and you can kind of see it is mostly cream, and then it's got some neon pops of yellow and orange in there, and I think it works really well in this. I'm super pleased. So yeah, that's what I'm knitting on. Those are my 3 projects. There's been, I don't know, some of the podcasts we're watching recently, and there's always talk of this, of how many whips do you have? I am a finisher. I am a check off list kind of girl. I am, I finish, or I don't. I don't let things linger. I don't start things and then throw them and come back to them years later. I either finish them, or if I don't really like them, then I rip them out and stop doing them. And I've talked about it, but I like to have 2, 3, maybe 4 projects max on the needles, different needs. You know, I usually have a travel project, usually a sock, and then 2 projects going, and I like them to be different weights if I can. Doesn't always happen, but right now I actually, with my socks and fingering, my cowl in sport, and then my sweater is DK, because then that lets your hands do things, and they'll be at different points. Like my sweater very shortly is going to be in the mindless knit in the round part for the body, and should go pretty fast in there. Now coming up, and I'll give you a little preview, but coming up in about 6 weeks, I will be doing a almost 3-week trip to South America. I will be, so as part of that, I'll talk about the trip in a minute, but as part of that, I've already been thinking about what I want to bring because I'm going to try to travel light, carry on only. Be a challenge in terms of packing and things like that, and I will be doing a mix of active things and social things and knitting retreat, and so I will definitely be part of the capsule wardrobe kind of thing and pretty limited in what I can bring, including my knitting. And so I've been thinking ahead of what I can bring because like this sweater, too big, too much room. Just socks, I'm worried I would go through them fast if that's all I have to work on because I may or may not have a lot of knitting time, will depend. But I think right now, and I'll share them, I'll just talk about them, but I did order some yarn from Gauge Dye Works. I think I saw a hat that my friend Pam did at Virginia Beach knitting retreat this past year where she had used a skein, and she does these great long striping repeats. And so I signed up for her newsletter and I kind of been following, and she released like her Halloween fall color for this year as well as one she did for last year, and it looks amazing. So I ordered a skein that it should be on its way soon. So I'm planning on using one of those to knit a Musselburgh, which is what Pam had been knitting, and it looked amazing. So once you get started, lots of knitting, mindless. So I'm going to be bringing that. I also will be doing a Joji shawl because I'll be going to Joji's retreat, and I did pick up some yarn, and that, I forget what the pattern is called, but I've already printed it out, and then I think a pair of socks. Just, I'll have a skein wound up, and I'll be able to squeeze that in somewhere in case I finish. But those will probably be my 2 main projects as of right now. I might bring a third, but again, it has to be very compressible, very small. So it will be fingering, or probably fingering weight, and something, you know, I would like to bring something bigger. Be nice to be knitting on a sweater or something like that, but it's just too much stuff to bring if I'm trying to minimize my luggage. And that will be a challenge. Not a challenge. I mean, I frequently travel with just a travel on, but because of the different things I'm going to be doing, I'm really focusing on trying to minimalize. I expect to be doing hotel laundry, meaning in your sink to do some stuff. So it'll be interesting. I've never done successfully this extent for this long, but it'll be great. So that is all of my knitting. Now, what else have I been doing? Let's talk about trips. So since I saw you last, I went to Boston, and this was a planned trip with my boyfriend to go specifically because the Dodgers were playing the Red Sox. And he wanted to go see that matchup and see it in Fenway, because Fenway is one of the great baseball stadiums, one of the oldest stadiums now, and it is unique. It is Boston, and it is really cool. So we had arranged to do a pretty quick trip. We flew red eye, and we got in on Wednesday, and we flew out on Saturday morning. So it was pretty quick. My family came up to join me for a night or two. So they live in Rhode Island, or I guess currently still live in Rhode Island, but they're all about to move, which I'll talk about. But it ends up being, so they all came up, my mom, my brother, my nieces and nephew, my sister. We went to the Science Museum, which was awesome. We walked around. The first day, my boyfriend and I were together, so we walked the Freedom Trail, which I hadn't done in years and years, and it was super hot and muggy. And yeah, it was New England in the summer. Exactly what I remember from growing up, and one of the reasons I don't actually like to visit in the summer is because it is muggy and gross and whatever. But we stayed in downtown Boston, and I love Boston. Boston is such a great city, and if it just had better weather, maybe I would have stayed. So we did that. We did Science Museum. The following day, it was still super hot, so we ended up, it was definitely a museum kind of trip. So we went to the Museum of Fine Arts. We did go on the duck boats, which my mother insists that I'm sure not insists. She knows, she's my mother. She took me on when I was younger, but she has these really fond memories, I think, of going when she was a kid and then bringing us with a kid. And so we did them. And let me tell you, swan boats are the lamest. They are super lame. We didn't do the duck boats. Those are the ones that are the tour and go into the river and things like that. I would have been up for that. But we did the very classic tour and on the commons where they have a lake, though it's more like a pond, and they have these little boats that go around, and they have a swan in front. So we did that, but it was super hot. So after that, we went to the Museum of Fine Arts, and you know, that was great. Just walking around, because you know what keeps air conditioning up? Fine arts museums, because all of the beautiful art in there stays. You know, most of the rooms were 68 when it was like, you know, 90 plus with 100% humidity outside. So yeah, so that was a good trip. And then we went to the game, and it was a great game because I think of the series, they both took some, but the first game, the Dodgers won. So that was fun. And we got last minute tickets, and we got a great seat, and it was very quintessential. Lots of season ticket holders and new guys, and it was just a good time. It was great seeing it. It's a great ballpark. I mean, I've only been to Fenway a few times, but it is definitely iconic. So that was that trip. And then we came back on Saturday, and we came back and made it such a short trip because I had gotten us tickets for San Diego Comic-Con for the Sunday. They're very difficult tickets to get. If you've been here a while, you know, years ago, I used to go pretty regularly for all 4 days, and I used to get tickets, and I had a group. But now I still get in the lottery, and I like to just go for a day or so. I don't get into any of the panels. That was when I stopped going. When I used to go, and I loved it because you would go and you would get to see your favorite science fiction and fantasy shows, and they would bring all of their stars, and you would get to see their personalities, which are, you know, very different from their characters. I specifically remember Stargate, SG-1. Those guys were great. And so that's what I used to do. And the year I stopped going regularly was the year I stood in line for the room that is. And I think I stood in line for 2 or 3 hours, and I didn't get in for the panel I wanted. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I was like, I'm done. I'm not willing to camp overnight for any of these things. I'm not willing. I was getting older, and I was like, it's fine. So anyways, the point is I got tickets for my boyfriend and I with the intent that all we would do is walk the floor. And the floor is where all the vendors are. There's all sorts of cool things, different kinds of vendors. And that's what we did. So we came back on Saturday, and then Sunday morning, we took the train down to San Diego, and we walked the floor all day, bought really cool art and, you know, other things, nerdy things, and saw lots of cool things. And then we stayed in San Diego overnight, and San Diego's great. And we had dinner with his brother and his brother's family, so his nieces and stuff like that, because they're in San Diego. And then we took the train back, and it was like the perfect little trip, and so much fun. And then a few weeks later, my niece came to see me. Now my nieces and nephews always come to see me every summer. My nephew doesn't come anymore because he is, you know, an adult, but they always did when they were kids. So this was my middle niece, who is 15, and she has been coming by herself for a few years. Her younger sister, who just is 5, will start coming to see me next year. 5 is the kind of the cutoff, because I like them to come without parent because kids are very different without their parents, and we, you know, the point is bonding time. So anyway, so my niece came, and so it was planned for her to come, and so she had actually asked me to bring her best friend, and I was like, sure, if her parents will let her come, bring your best friend. So I had 2 15-year-old girls for 10 days, I think, and we did a lot. They got in on a Saturday. On Sunday, we went and did the Warner Brothers studio tour, something I've never done. I obviously live in a town with lots of studios and things like that, but never really. It's kind of one of those things where if you live in a place, you don't always go and do your own tourist things. And every time I do one of these things, I say I should go do this without visitors, but it always happens with visitors. So we did the Warner Brothers studio tour, which was really cool, even though it was a Sunday and nothing was filming that day. The lot was empty. I imagine it'd be a very different tour during the week, and especially during heavy filming season, which it isn't right now. But that was cool because that let me know that it's another cool thing to visit. And then they have, they have permanent exhibits of like Star Wars and Harry Potter stuff. And then we got to walk around all the back lots. We got to go in the Jennifer Hudson studio. they weren't filming, but we got to go and see how big and how many different sets they have on that. I think they're filming the Noah Wiley medical one. I tried watching it, but it was too real. Anyways, that's filming there right now. Joji and Mandy, which is not a show, but I think it's a spinoff of Young Sheldon, was filming there, and I think something else was filming actively that they were filming. But they have a ton of studios, different things filming all the time, commercials, movies, etc. But it was really cool, and I highly recommend if anyone's coming to LA. It was worth it. We were almost 4 hours between just doing the studio tour. They took you on a cart, you got to walk off, you got to see the sets. The tour guides are very knowledgeable. They tell you all the different things that, you know, these different areas that they can make look like a lot of different things. And then some of the different areas, as I said, we got to go in the studio. The other thing that they're heavy on is friends. So they have like the friend setup with the fountain, and you got to take pictures, and it was great. So we did that on their Sunday that they got here. Monday and Tuesday I worked, and Wednesday we went to Magic Mountain, which was fine. I've been to Magic Mountain a few times, usually in the summer because my nieces or nephews are here, and it was super hot. It was awesome that she had a friend with here because I literally only went on a single ride, and it was an indoor air-conditioned ride because as much as I like roller coasters, and I do, my body does not like roller coasters anymore. And that's what I got the last time I went on some of those major rides. Like, I'm not scared of roller coasters. I enjoy them, but I feel I get motion sickness now more that I'm getting older. I get susceptible to headaches. So I didn't go on any of the rides. They went on all the rides, and it was super hot. So we got there first thing in the morning, and that was great. It was a Wednesday, so it was midweek. Hardly anyone there. They walked on quite a few of the first major roller coasters. And then it got hotter and more people. And so they were done by, I think, 2:33. But at that point, I think they've gotten on, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 roller coasters. So they'd done almost all of them, but the heat was getting to them because every time they would go on a ride, I would park myself in shade and sit and watch podcasts and knit. And, you know, a lot of times one of the issues with Magic Mountain, at least up where we are, it's in the high desert, is that they don't have great shade for when you're waiting. And so they were progressively getting hot. And so they were done. They were cooked by that point. And so we went back. We had some ice cream. They took naps. And I think we just watched a movie. Thursday, we got up and we took the ferry to Catalina Island, which is an island off of Los Angeles. It is has most of the island is conservatory, so there's actually a lot of camping and hiking and things there. But they have Avalon is the main town there, and a lot of people just go, and it's this cute little downtown area. It only has, I think, 4,000 year-round residents, and in the summer and stuff, it swells to like 10,000 because of tourism is their main thing. So we took the ferry over, and then we stayed in the downtown area, which was nice, and we just did the one night. But it was awesome because the boyfriend and I got to go walk around and do ourselves, and then I let the 15-year-olds do their own thing because they couldn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, so they laid out on the beach, which was very tiny and was not warm enough for me to be doing any of that. It was like 70 and kind of overcast, but teenagers don't care. So they laid out for a little while, and then we were off like exploring and walking and checking out the island. And then after they finished that, they went back, changed, and then they went shopping in all the little shops and everything. And then we met up for dinner and did the overnight, and then left the next day. So we left the next day, took the ferry back, and then we stayed that night on the Queen Mary. And this was another thing that it's been there forever. I've never had the opportunity. The Queen Mary is an old Cunard cruise line ship from I think it was built in the late 20s and was active until the 60s. And it used to do the transatlantic crossing from the UK to New York. And so that was during the heyday when lots of stars and stuff did it. And then during the war, it was actually a warship. And they decommissioned it in the 60s and sold it on auction. And it was bought by the city of Long Beach. And since then, it has been tied up in the harbor and it is permanently in the harbor. They have removed a lot of things, and it has been turned into a hotel slash event space, things like that, pretty consistently since that point. And so we actually stayed on the Queen Mary in one of the rooms. Now, the other thing the Queen Mary is known for is paranormal activity. A lot of ghost sightings, Let me preface by saying, I don't not believe. I think there's a lot of things out there that are beyond our knowing. And just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I am an engineer based at heart. And so, you know, I take everything with a grain of salt. But I did, when I mentioned all of these things, because when they got here, I gave them choices. I was like, hey, we could do this, this, and this. So I hadn't booked any of this before they got here. And I mentioned the Queen Mary, and they're like, oh, we know about the Queen Mary. And I'm like, you do? They're like, oh yeah, there's like a YouTube of these, you know, paranormal guys and whatever. So they were excited about it. So that was one of the things we booked. And then I booked the paranormal tour. So we took a tour with a tour guide. It's like an 8 p.m. tour. It was a 2-hour tour of some of the areas that aren't open to the public, and then some of these stories. So also really enjoyable. Also, teenagers got to go off on their own because, again, we were on a boat, can't get off. And all of these different areas are open once you get access to the ship. So they show you, you can go up to the captain's quarters. You can go up to this. Like, all of these permanent exhibits are open. I think they were open till 8 p.m. And then, you know, you can wander the ship. They have restaurants, they have bars. It was great. So we did the tour. My boyfriend did not. He is more of a believer, and he had been to the Queen Mary, and he does not like to scare himself. So instead, he went off to have a drink. Girls and I went off to go do the paranormal tour, and then after the paranormal tour, they went back to the room. I thought I was going back to the room because I was tired, but I had seen one on the event things that they were going to have a speakeasy that night. And so he had found the speakeasy, and he says, you have to come and see the speakeasy. And it was really cool. So it was just behind a door on one of the levels of the ship. And it looks like an engine room that they had turned into, again, some meeting spaces. And they had looked like a 1940s band there, singer, doing lounge covers, lots of people dressed up, dancing, and drinks, and it was great. In theory, you had to know like the code. You knock on the door, know the code, but because he had already been there, he had like the official pin, which you're now there. And we spent about an hour there and listened to music and things like that before we went back. And it was really cool because you're there, and then you're just, you know, going to the other side of the boat to your hotel room. It was super cold in the hotel room, which they knew. They warned me when I warned it, and they're like, you cannot control the air conditioning. It is controlled ship-wide. If you are too cold, there are blankets, and we were definitely in the too cold portion. The other half of the ship was a little warm, but this half was cold. So we did that, stayed overnight, and then the next day came home, and that I'd said not doing anything else on this Saturday. And so we chilled and etc. And then Sunday, which was the last full day they were here, I took them shopping because there's nothing that 15-year-olds like to do more than shopping. So we went to the mall. I was with them we shopped for like 4 hours. And it was interesting. I mean, seeing their shopping, what they wanted. I didn't limit, you know, I gave them a little budget to buy something, and we went all these stores and then back, and because they were like, oh, I could get this, I could get that. And then seeing that all teenagers have the same, or teenage girls right now seem to have the same, like most teenagers, the same look. And so they are very long, straight hair, tight little tops, and short shorts or short skirts. And that's what I saw, because it was literally like everyone was doing back to school shopping. And there were just so many teenagers at the mall. But that was fun. It was fun shopping. It was fun doing it. And then they came back, they packed, and then I drove them to the airport on Monday morning, and they flew back. They had a great trip. I had a great trip. Her friend was super nice, super polite, very well raised. Lots of thank yous. Did their dishes. They cooked themselves. Like, one of the first things I did was take them to the grocery store because I don't know what they eat. So they got their own snacks and food like that. But like, they made pasta for themselves one night. You know, they fed themselves while I was at work. They did all this stuff, and then they cleaned up after themselves. The room they were staying in, which is this room, looked like a cyclone hit it. Like, I don't understand. I don't do that, but it was fine. They got everything all in, and the flight was everything good. So that's what I had for my trip. It was like an in-town trip, but it was so much fun. And it was great that I got to do things that I haven't had a chance. Like, I had been to Catalina, but I had never stayed overnight in Catalina, never stayed on the Queen Mary, never been to the studio tour. I had been to the mall, but not with 15-year-olds. And I was able, actually, I picked up myself a pair of new jeans, and it was like Gap 90s style. And I was like, yeah, because we're all a child, you know, we all stick to that formative time of dressing, of that. So I feel very comfortable in 90s jeans. Like, this whole thing with these really wide legs and things like that, I keep trying them on, and they just don't feel right to me, because I feel right in the jeans, the 90s jeans, because I was a child in the 90s. So yeah, so that was great. So that was all of the travels I've done. During all those travels, I had socks, I had stuff I was knitting. It was great. Got things done. One of the other things I did between right after my San Diego trip, is I had gotten an email from Purl Soho, because I had just bought this yarn. And they said that they were going to be having a warehouse sale. And if you didn't know, their warehouse is actually in Southern California, which I knew, but I hadn't had a chance to go. I had a friend who years ago, they used to have the warehouse open, and they don't anymore after COVID, and they never reopened it. But my yarn, when I ordered this, like, came next day, which never happens when I order yarn. Most of the time it's coming from the East Coast, and it takes a week. It came the next day. But I got the email for the studio sale, and it was like a Saturday, and I was in town, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. So I think it was whatever the date was. I can't remember what the date was. I got up, and it is a 45-minute drive for me. It's down in Orange County, and I'm in Los Angeles County. But I got up on a Saturday, like, before the boyfriend, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm going shopping. He's like, what? I'm like, oh yeah. So I got in the car, and I thought the sample sales, I thought it started at 8. So I got there like 5 minutes past 8, and there was a long line outside. It's in this, you know, industrial part of Santa Ana, and there was a long line. And so I just got at the end of the line, and then the line wasn't moving. So then I'm like looking at my phone, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't open until 9. And then as I'm standing there, more and more people, and in this line, there were people with chairs. Like, there were people who knew this and planned it. I didn't go with anything in mind. I didn't know what they were going to have. I wanted to see some more of the yarns, because Purl Soho is only online. And so a lot of the yarns I've never seen in person. But they were focusing on the things they were getting, you know, they were selling. It's not like they had their whole line of yarns that you could go see or anything like that. It was, you know, what they were trying to sell in the warehouse. But I still managed to do a bit of damage. So it opened at 9, and they limited, it was outside, and they limited, I think it was like 25 or 30 people at a time. So it took me, I don't know, half hour or so to get to the point, and people were coming out with big bags, because big bags. So I went in, and some of the stuff I think had already sold out, because they said they had limited quantities. They were selling, you know, discontinued colors of certain things and blah, blah, blah. There were some cones. A lot of the cones went pretty fast. They were mainly of yarns they have, either discontinued yarns, discontinued colors, or things that they had tried that they didn't end up putting into production. So with that said, here's what I got. And I haven't looked at it since I put it in this bag and bought it. So some of it is unlabeled. So like, this was just called Assorted Sample Colors Miss Yarn. It's a fingering. It looks like a sock weight or a merino. It was like $8. I think I put it in as like a fingering. Another one that was like that is this one. So these together could potentially, this has longer colors. Again, $8. Like, some of it was, I'm a sucker. I like sock yarn. I love this fingering, even though I 100% don't know what it is. Close enough. So I got those 2 skeins. Another one I got, and this is definitely thicker, and I think I knew what this one was. One of the shop people knew what this was, this yarn, and I forget what it's called. But again, it looks like maybe a colorway, or they tried something and they didn't use it, so they were selling it. So this will probably be a hat. It's more, I think it was like a worsted weight, and it's a single ply. It's really soft. So I got that. Now, let's see. Let me pull out. Another one I got, which this is definitely their sock yarn, and this is their Cricket Green, and it's their fine print. This was, what was it? It was like $15. And, you know, I like sock yarn, and I like this green. So I picked it up. It's this really cool green. And then I could also use the yarn base. These were lace skeins, and lace was, if there were more, they were going really fast. I don't have a ton of this definitely is a mohair in my stash, and so these are both my colors, very much so. And you know, so I just picked them up, and I have no patterns for any of this, which, you know, but I picked up these two skeins. Now the big thing that I picked up, and these are gonna be for sweaters, and I think I had earmarked some, but this is the good wool, and this is gosh, what was this yarn? It is the good wool. I'm just gonna pull up my Ravelry stash, because I did stash all of these, and then I could say what it is. Purl Soho good wool. And so this is a sport weight, 100% wool. And I picked up 3 skeins of the dark gray, and then 3 skeins of the light gray. The idea that I could do some type of striping if I wanted. These are very neutral colors. I'll be able to use these as a base for a lot of sweaters. It is sport weight. They're 350 yards. So this gave me 1150 yards of each color. This is a lot. I will probably be able to do multiple sweaters depending on how I do these. Even if I used all this for one sweater, you know, if I do color work, if I do things. And I just thought they were really economical and neutral, and I like sport weight, and I don't have a lot of sport weight. I like that in between DK and fingering, and I think they were like $9 each. I think they're like $14 normally, $15 normally. So they were, or might be 12. Not super sale, but enough. And when you're going to these yarn sales, especially like this, like, cause you don't get to like sit there forever. Like, you go through the stuff and then you buy and you get out, because while we're shopping, the line is getting longer and longer as more people come. So that was what I got. And then the other thing you got to do as you left is you got to like ring a bell or do something to see if you won an extra prize. And I did. So you got to pick from these prizes. So I picked, it was this bundle, and it was this Likey crochet, and then it was bundled with these two. And this is Purl Soho Spindle. It's the wool cashmere mulberry silk. And so yeah, I have no idea. But again, this was a prize that I won. So I picked it up, and there were a few different things you could choose from. Some were yarn, some were other things, and this one caught my eye, and so picked that up. So that is my recent stash acquisition. I think I did, at least for the sweater yarns, you know, put some stuff in there, but pretty happy. I think all of this was, I don't know, little, I was trying to do 100, and I think I did like 140 or something, maybe 120. So yeah, super fun. I would definitely go back next year. I might do the same kind of thing, because it was good to be waiting there early and get there early, because people were coming out with like big bags of stuff. They also had, I was semi tempted, if you've ever seen on Purl Soho, or if you go to their website and then watch YouTube and you get the targeted ads, you know, they talk about the color note bundle. So I got to see those in person. They were like worsted weight, and they're like a color gradient. I was tempted, but I didn't have anything in mind, and it was worsted weight, so it's a heavier weight than I like, so I didn't get it. But it was nice to see them in person. Very friendly people. All of the women who worked there were very friendly. All of the knitters who came were very friendly. Obviously, they were probably from all over. I didn't see anyone I knew. Not that I know a ton of knitters here in Los Angeles anyways, but it was so cool. And yeah, so that was acquisitions. And then, as I said, I have yarn coming from Gauge Dye Works. They're a Canadian company, I think, because I think they also said that after this round of shopping or whatever, that they're on hold for pausing, like most small businesses, because of the end of the de minimis tariffs and how that's going to impact everything. So I was happy I got that order in before, and I'll show you that yarn when it comes on the next one or in this thing. But I got 2 skeins of sock yarn, 2 different colors, and they're like Halloween-y colors. So sucker for that. I had a goal. I always have a goal of decreasing the amount of stash I have. Didn't happen this year. I think I'm going to get rid of the goal for next year because I'm not, now that with my new, and I will apologize, my cat is, you might see a little shaking. She is sitting on the bottom base and now she's decided she needs to take a bath. So it is rocking a little bit. I don't want to move her. But now that I have a new yarn cabinet, I have more storage. So before it was always limited to the storage and I didn't want to increase my storage bins, but now I have a new yarn cabinet, can hold more yarn. So I am not at stash. I'm not at Sable. And I'm okay with increasing my stash right now. Not that I have that many more knitting events for this year. We'll see. And I have plenty of things in my queue of yarn I have to knit for. But yeah, so that was that. Other than that, life's been going on. Work is busy, getting busier. But you know, what I love about my work is it allows me to take time off. And so as I mentioned, I'm doing the big trip. So I had told you guys I had got into Hohi's retreat and we'll be going there. My brother is coming with me now. And then as part of that, I wanted to, because he's coming, I could do a different kind of trip. And so we actually booked before Hohi's retreat. We're doing a G Adventures tour where we're going through Chile and Argentina. And so we're actually going to be doing some hiking and maybe some river rafting, seeing some of the cities. So adding longer. So I'm actually flying to Chile to start my trip and then doing that tour, and it ends in Buenos Aires. And then we have like an extra day or so in Buenos Aires, then Hohi's retreat. And then I am flying to end it to Iguazu Falls, which is supposedly amazing. And we're spending 3 nights there. And then we're flying out of Rio to go back. And that is almost 3 weeks. So super looking forward to it. But as I said, I'm doing carry-on. I'm doing minimalist. I'm going to do it. And so I've been reading a lot of like Reddits and things like that and one baggers, and yeah. I'll show you, you know, once maybe I'll do a little video when I figure out what I'm doing capsule wise, and to make sure that I'm a minimalist packer. I'm looking forward to the freedom of it. I don't like to have like a lot of extra stuff with me. I like the freedom. The whole point for me, because I travel semi-frequently, is when you don't check a bag, there's a lot more freedom if something goes wrong because you have all your stuff with you. So you can get on another flight, you could get on another thing, you can change. And that was evidenced by, you know, when we came back from Florida and the airline, you know, didn't put my bag on the connecting flight because our connections were messed up. So you don't have to worry about any of that. And I definitely don't want to worry about any of that traveling internationally. So that's why it's all going with carry-on. No check bags. All right. What else am I doing? Travel-wise, the other thing I'm doing is right before I leave for that big trip, I'm doing my annual college roommate trip in Santa Barbara this year. So that was the place we picked. So they're coming in for 3 nights and we're going up to Santa Barbara. And these are my oldest friend from high school, actually, and we went to college together, and then our college roommates, and then yeah, there's 5 of us going this year, so that will be fun. My brother will come in a few days before we travel because he's gonna travel with me via Los Angeles, and so he might come down, so he'll be there. And then right now, tentatively, the other trips is December. We might go to Florida. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but my family has I think I did. They're moving to Florida. So my sister decided, to be fair, she had been wanting to leave New England for a very long time. She'd been looking on and off for years. Well, they pulled the trigger on a house in Florida. So they were moving to Florida, and then they all kind of live together. My sister, her family, and my mom and my brother. And so now my mom and my brother are also moving to Florida. My sister has a new house, and my mom and my brother are going to temporarily move in with my grandmother. My mom might be there longer. My grandmother is 93 and of an age where, you know, she still lives alone and is very independent, but probably could use someone else in the house helping out a little bit. So that's going to be my mom. And then my brother's just figuring out what he's going to do. So he's there temporarily because we have all these trips planned. So we can't figure out what he wants to do. And then my brother and I do have a trip also planned and scheduled for Vietnam in March of next year. So that's what's on the books for right now. There's some possibilities of some other things. I just need to see how they pan out. Reading, watching, let's go into that a little bit. TV. So we are on Netflix. I highly recommend this show called Son of a Critch. And it is a coming of age story a la like Young Sheldon, that kind of thing, of a boy growing up in Newfoundland. And it is just really well done. It is a really well done young age. So the creator and father, this is based, loosely on his experience growing up there in the 80s and being kind of the nerdy kid and his, growing up from, I think it's 3 seasons, and it starts with him like in 6th grade and going, I think he's in like 9th grade now. And it is just really sweet and heartwarming and fun to watch and easy. We watch it as like a palate cleanser after things, and it is just really cute. The other thing that we blitzed, which was dropped, was Leanne. And this was a new show on Netflix, and it is based in Arkansas, I think. And it is basically a woman and her family, and she is suddenly getting divorced because her husband just has decided, and it's this very family dynamic. It is very tongue-in-cheek. It's very kind of southernish. It is very funny. And we watched that super fast. I think there were like 10 episodes, and we watched them over a week. I started watching Wednesday. I've watched the first half of Wednesday, 2nd season. That is based on the original kind of series. Wednesday Addams and her in preparatory school, and is Jenna Ortega is the main character. She's very well, and so this is the 2nd season. It's kind of dark and kind of cool, and it was interesting because my niece and her friend had watched it on the plane, and they went, "Oh, are you watching?" I'm like, "Yeah, but we're only 2 episodes of the 4 because they dropped the first half of the season, and they're going to drop the second half later." So we watched some of that. I also watched they had us watch a show that they're watching. I Turned Pretty last summer or something, or the summer I Turned Pretty. And I guess it's like in the 3rd season, but they're really into it. So we watched an episode that they had seen, and then the next one dropped, and they had us watch it, and it was just funny. It is very teenage. It was very teenage. What else? We watched The Gilded Age. It was great. I hope it comes back for another season. It's just a beautiful show. Carrie Coon is amazing. I love her character in it. And then the thing we've started watching is on Hulu, and it's Alien Earth. And it is a TV show set in the franchise of the Alien movies. And it is, I think, I did look it up. I think it's like 50 years before the original Aliens movie, and it takes place on Earth, where the xenomorphs had been brought back by the Yutani Corporation and like crash landed in another town, and we're kind of into it. So it's the beginning of synthetics. And it's been great so far. I mean, I love an alien movie. So that's what we've been watching. Reading, I'm always reading. Whether I'm listening to them or reading. I've done 18 books since last I podcasted in June. Typical, supernatural fantasy ones, straight fantasies, horror books, mystery crimes. I love me a mystery crime. That's typically what I listen to audiobooks. But the 3 I'm going to talk about here are ones I want to highlight, or readers, or things that we're going. The first one I'll do is The Bewitching. So put it up over here. The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. And this was a brand new book. I don't even know. I think I saw it listed on Goodreads of like upcoming releases or something, and I read the synopsis and I added it, and unlike a lot of times, I actually added it to my hold list to get it pretty quick after it came out. And I listened to it on audiobooks. And it is the tale of 3 women, different times. The main character is in college, doing graduate studies in the U.S., and she is actually of Mexican descent, and trying to do a story, or her research on some things that have happened about this author who had previously wrote horror book like 50 years ago or something. and kind of some supernatural starts things. And then there's a second tale told from her grandmother's perspective of this supernatural happening that happened in Mexico. And then there's the third tale of the in-between of this character that was based on that author that she's researching, and what happened then, and how they're kind of all intertwined and tied. It was really well done. The audio was sometimes when they switch between different time frames, it is hard to keep track, as opposed to reading when you're like, oh, it's very clearly we're going to the next character. It was well done. I did have to sometimes pay attention that we were switching points of view and different stories. But once you knew the story, even if like, because sometimes I'll blank for a second and I won't listen for a minute, and I'll, check back in, check back out, and it would very quickly be able to get up to speed because they were very different stories. So once the stories were all set, then you knew what story you were in just based on what was being said. So that was easy. And it was just a really well done. It wasn't horror. It wasn't very gory. It was supernatural. It was like a spooky kind of story. And, but I love anything told from women's point of view. Being told about Mexico and kind of how they looked at different things there. It was, about brujas and, witches, and whether that is the case or not, and etc. And there was a twist at the end that I didn't 100% see coming. So that was fun. So highly recommend if you're looking for that kind of great book. And the audio book was great. And that's Silvia Moreno-Garcia, The Bewitching. And it's a relatively new book. The other book I listened to is Mira Grant's Overgrowth. Now, this is actually a pseudonym for Shannon McGuire. It's spelled Seanan McGuire. And I've talked about her before because she does the Wayward Children series I like. She does Alchemical Journeys. She does Ghost Roads. She does the the October Day series. I love this author. And I don't know if I got recommended this book, and I think afterwards when I looked at it, I looked her up and realized that this is the pseudonym that she does these science fiction under, as opposed to more fantasy. And so it's called Overgrowth, and it takes place from the point of view of, starts off with a story of a girl who walks into the woods and is eaten by a plant and comes back out and then tells everyone she's an alien. And of course, nobody believes her. And then it fast forwards to her being in her 30s, and she's still in it. She still says she's an alien, but she's living the life of Earth. And then what happens, that now the aliens are coming to Earth, and now all of a sudden they believe these people that have apparently been put here, or not put here, but they have taken over the hosts of things. So basically they're a plant species, and this plant takes over a host of children, basically. And then these children are now alien, but with human feelings and human, outwardly human. And then what happens when the invasion gets there. And then this whole series of narratives of that, the invasion, and who the aliens are, and who these people that have put there who didn't really know anything, but had, certain biological implants that they didn't realize. Like, it was funny. It's like they told everyone they were aliens, like from a young age, and they were all over the planet, because again, these seed pods went down to Earth and grew these plants, these consciousness all over, and so different people all over the world. And they told everyone, if they asked, oh, I'm an alien. And it was about the interpersonal of, her friends who supposedly always believed her, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, you weren't lying. You really are. And then what happens with the invasion and things like that. And one of the, it was just really well done. It's more science fiction. It's definitely, that kind of genre. It's aliens kind of thing. And it was a great audiobook. I really enjoyed it. It's called Mira Grant Overgrowth. And it was a good listen. The other one I'm going to share is one of my supernatural fantasy romancy kind of things. And it is G.P. Robbins' Partner in Crime. Sorry, that was my neighbors. And that is set in a world where dragons exist and unicorns and they're shapeshifters and people with magical powers. And this is the second book in the series. Now, this is another one where G.P. Robbins is actually a pseudonym for an author who writes a lot of these kind of books that I read. And I didn't realize that until, I don't know, I was at the back of a book and you start seeing this. It's like, oh, she writes something else as, let me pause a second. Sorry about that. Anyways, G.P. Robbins is a pseudonym for R.G. Blaine, which is another series that I read. But she also writes as Susan Copperfield, Audrey Green, Lilith Daniels. So she basically has partitioned all these little different worlds of hers. So they're not all like fantasy. Some of them are modern, contemporary, and she writes them under these different things. And it's probably easier to keep whatever her reason for doing that. That's what she does. So I had read her under R.G. Blaine, and she has a series that is very magical. It's there's so many books now, but it's super funny. She writes, they're sort of romancy, but they're more fantasy, but she never actually writes any of the hard stuff in it. There's never any sex scenes. There's never anything like that. There's the implication of it. There is, you know, some pseudo romance, but it never gets into that romance. It's more, that's a part of it. There is that relationship part of it, but there's not that. So if you're not into that, this is something you could get, because you get the taste of a romance. And but this one is more action. It is all just really funny action with these dragons and their different personalities, and it's really a police detective and then someone assigned to him who is a shapeshifter, trying to figure out who is murdering all these people in this city. And it's all of the weird kooky interactions based on different personalities involved of the different dragons and unicorns and things like that. And I dig that stuff. I just do. I love fantasy. Is definitely one of the very first things I read when I was a kid. I used to read Piers Anthony. I used to read all of this stuff. I love a good fantasy that puts me in another world. I love magic. I love shape-shifting. I love, you know, werewolves. I love all of that stuff. And then if you combine it with more of adult themes, it's the best of both for me. So G.P. Robbins, but I recommend anything R.G. Blaine. If it sort of sounds like it's something you're into, check her out. She's very prolific. She probably puts out like 4 books a year of all these different pseudonyms for different worlds. This is different world than the first one, the first main one that I read, which is a magical, let me look it up. What is that series called? Magical romantic comedy. And that's kind of what they are. They're more comedies than anything else. It's magical romantic comedies with a body count. And that is really cool because it's a series. Everyone has different characters, but it has a thoroughfare. You get to see old characters. You get to do this. That is the one where the devil and God and all these things exist and their interplay in the world. But it's more comedy than anything else. But then there's just this little bit of romance because it's always kind of a couple based. So yeah, I recommend that whole series. I think she has 15 novels and then 4 short stories and then more coming. I think she has more than that actually, but so my recommendation is R.G. Blaine, specifically the one I read that I most recently read, which is the second book, is G.P. Robbins. So that series, but I recommend those books if you're looking for that kind of thing. They make me laugh. All right, I think that's enough. I'm going super long today. I apologize. I guess I had a lot to talk about, a lot of things to share with you. It's been a while. I will say for my next podcast, it might be out before I go on my trip, or it might be afterwards. So you will either see one in early October, or you will see one in mid-November. Because I come back first week in November, and then yeah, we'll see from there. So we'll see when you see me next. It will definitely be fall. So I hope everyone enjoys the end of their summer. I hope everyone has had all of whatever whatever things happen at the end of summer for you, whether you have kids and they're going back to school, or you're a teacher and you're going back to school, or it's just, you know, you're ready for the cooler weather, or if you're on the other side of the world, you're ready for the hotter weather. I hope everyone just enjoys. I've had a great summer, and I'm looking forward to a good fall. I'm pretty just happy right now. Like, my trips, balancing trips and doing things, whether they be knitting trips, international trips, with work, is how I maintain my happy place until I retire, and then it'll be more travel and happiness. But I have that perfect balance right now, and I am very lucky, and I've said this before, I'm very lucky in the fact that I am a public servant. I just passed my 25 years of working for the city of Los Angeles, so I'm pretty senior, and I get a decent amount of vacation every year, and I also have the ability to accrue vacation and overtime. That's how I take these long trips. And I'm very lucky to work in the part of the organization where I can. Like, it is not unheard of for people to take a month off and like go international. So I'm very privileged to do that, and I'm very excited to be going to do that. And I just hope, you know, I got to keep the work going. That's the only thing. I've said it before. I don't really I have people who work under me, but their roles are different. They're mainly more field inspection for construction. And so a lot of what I do, which is paperwork and contract administration, doesn't get done while I'm not there. So I have to get it set up to a point where I can, it's never a good time to leave, but you know, that everything won't fall when I'm there. And then it just piles up for me. So it is what it is. But I'm just happy to be able to share with you, share my knitting, share my new sweaters, share my yarn acquisitions, share my travels, and hopefully I'll get to see some of you soon. I'd be interesting if anyone's going in the retreats. I will be doing more of my retreats for next year. We're just trying to see. I'm not going to Rhinebeck this year. It is too close to the trip I'm taking, and not even too close. I think now I'm actually going to be in South America during Rhinebeck. So I wouldn't be able to go anyways. And yeah, but I hope everyone else has a great end of the year, and I'll talk to everyone soon. Maybe. That's a wrap from Hollywood, where fantasy meets fiber and dreams are knit. Everyone,